Hello, my name is Azmi Sharam. I'm a lecturer in the Faculty of Law, University of Blair, and today we are going to be having a conversation about children's rights. And joining us is Dr. Victor Karunan, an expert in the matter. Victor, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Victor Karunan. I'm retired from UNICEF after 16 years. I now teach as a part-time lecturer in development studies at Chulalongkorn University, human rights and peace studies here in Mahidol University, and social policy in Thammasat University in Bangkok.
Fantastic. Now let's begin. All right, Victor, I'm going to start with a very basic question. Why do we need human rights for children?
Children are human beings, and as such, they have rights. So the UN adopted a declaration called the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which articulates the rights for children, which is also called the CRC. Now, the CRC defines children as all those human beings who are below 18 years of age. And that actually puts together infants, children, and adolescents, and clearly provides provisions for the rights of each of these categories of children and adolescents as well.
Right, okay. No, so this CRC, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it's a proper treaty, yes?
Yes, it's a treaty adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1989 as a convention. First time articulating the rights for children as human beings.
And how is it different as a treaty from other international laws?
Yeah, there's some very distinctive features of the CRC. One, that for the first time it brings together the whole body of rights, integrating civil, political, economic, social, cultural, and other rights together in a more comprehensive way, first. Second, it has special provisions for children because children have special needs. They have special support that they require when they're infants. And so it articulates those special provisions for children as a specific category in society.
Right, okay. It also talks about the best interests of the child, doesn't it?
Yes.
So what does this mean, the best interest of the child?
This is an interesting concept. Now, the best interest of the child is not defined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Oh, okay.
However, what it says is that the best interest of the child means that children's needs and children's concerns must be paramount when it comes to decision making about children. So in the case of, for example, as it often happens, in the case of divorce, when parents divorce, and the issue of custodianship of the children comes up. In that particular situation, the concerns of the children in terms of who they should belong to should take paramount over the concerns of the parents.
Right.
So that's how it is articulated. However, it's important to note that that depends on the situation and the context. So the definition of the best interest of a child is that the interests and concerns of children must always be paramount in decision making.
Right. I mean, in custody issues, you also have problems with culture, don't you? And
yes.
So, but the best interest of the child must be paramount.
Always take into consideration.
Okay.
So that's why it's important to get children to express their views, and that should be taken into consideration in decision making.
But Victor, when we speak about a child expressing themselves, of course, the convention takes into account that there are different ages. Am I correct?
Yes. There comes in another concept which is also important in terms of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is the concept of evolving capacity. What that concept means is that children's ability to think, articulate, and express themselves varies according to the age and the level of development.
Right.
So this concept is very important because in soliciting the views and opinions of children, or even to deal with children, one has to take this into account, their ability and the capacity to participate depending on the age and the circumstances.
Right. So the convention is age sensitive then, and
it is.
It's not just an expression, isn't it? It's other elements as well.
Yes, this is fundamental. It's important that in dealing with children, both in terms of the application of these rights and for programs and interventions that we make, that we always take into account as fundamental the considerations of age and circumstances and context.
And this would be different, right, from other human rights treaties because of this.
Because specific nature of children
Yes,
and their level of development.
All countries in Southeast Asia have ratified CRC. All countries have ratified the optional protocol on armed conflict except Myanmar. Myanmar signed it in 2015 but has not ratified it yet. All countries except Singapore have ratified the optional protocol on sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography. Except Thailand, no country has taken action with regard to the optional protocol on communications procedure. In Southeast Asia, only 3 countries have clearly laws against the use of corporal punishment in schools, and they are Indonesia, Laos, and Vietnam. Thailand does have regulations, but no law against corporal punishment. Instead, a number of countries have laws that can protect the person who hits a child in school from being prosecuted. Such laws are found in Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei, Myanmar, and Cambodia. The ILO Convention on Worst Forms of Child Labor is ratified by all Southeast Asia countries. The ILO Convention on Minimum Age to Work is not yet ratified by Myanmar and East Timor.
We have looked at challenges to protecting children's human rights, which include issues like education, children online, politics, and children's ability to participate. Violence is an important concern. The Global United Nations study on violence against children in 2006 detailed these problems in venues like at home, at school, in childcare, at work, and in the community. For juvenile justice, a practice of diversion, which is to divert children from entering the justice system and putting them into child welfare or community programs. Let's now turn to expert views on children's rights.
Well, the first thing I think we need to do is acknowledge that over the last 15 years there has been quite significant improvement around realising children's rights in ASEAN, particularly around the areas of reducing child mortality, access to education, even developing legislation around child protection. And yes, the CRC has been ratified by all countries in the region. The 2 optional protocols have been ratified by most. We do have the 3rd optional protocol, communication and procedure, that only Thailand has ratified yet. So the international legal framework is there. So why isn't it working as well as it should? I would suggest there are 3 main reasons for that. One is that states have put a lot of reservations and declarations around the CRC, particularly the more older members of ASEAN. So these need to be removed. Secondly, I think we have to recognize the diversity within ASEAN. There are a number of issues that impact on child rights, whether they're socio-economical issues around poverty or inequalities, whether they're political issues around security, corruption, democracy, whether they are environmental issues, for example. There's a lot of diversity there. So this impacts on children's rights. And then thirdly, I would say that in many ASEAN countries, the national child protection systems are very weak and developed. They're poorly resourced. They don't have trained personnel working within the systems, do not address the needs of the vulnerable groups. How does this manifest in ASEAN? We have a number of significant cross-cutting protection issues, child labour, for example, sexual exploitation of children, which has become particularly problematic because of IT developments and expansions in tourism within ASEAN. So, as well as there being country-specific challenges, there are regional challenges too. I think the main problem is that there simply has not been a juvenile justice system strongly developed within the region. Most children that come in conflict with the law end up within the adult justice system. So, for example, we don't have special courts for children. We don't have child-friendly procedures. We don't have staff that have necessarily been specially trained in how to work with children. So This means we don't have a child-friendly justice system in many of the countries in the region. And often the legislation and the policy for that isn't there either. And a further factor which I think is important is the fact that the age of criminal responsibility is so low within the ASEAN region. In a number of countries it's as low as 7 or 10. And so this is hardly in the best interest of the child.
Now, a technical question here. The CRC has 3 optional protocols. Can you explain to us what these are and what their purpose are?
Yeah. The first optional protocol is about the sale of children, child pornography, and child prostitution. It's important to remember the optional protocols are in addition to the Convention of the Rights of the Child. In that, the optional protocol means that this is a substantive area where further guidance is needed. That's why the Committee on the Rights of the Child looks at an area, identifies it an area that needs special consideration. So the first one is optional protocol on the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography, which basically deals with sexual exploitation of children. The purpose of that optional protocol was to give better guidance to governments as to how to deal with pedophiles, perpetrators of sexual violence against children, and how to bring due course of law into play and to punish these offenders. The second convention optional protocol is the one on children in armed conflict. This again deals with another special situation where you have many cases of children being involved in violence and in armed conflict, which is child soldiers. For those particular situations where children are recruited in armed forces or in armed gangs, etc., to perpetrate violence, the optional protocol deals with that situation and how advises governments and provides guidance as to how to deal with children who are involved in armed conflict and so on. That's another specific area. The third one, which is a new one and a very exciting one, which is just recently, about a year ago, adopted by the UN, is the optional protocol number 3 on what is called a communication procedure. This communication procedure means that children are able to bring to the attention of the convention, the CRC committee in Geneva, cases of violation of human rights. They can directly bring up these cases from individual children can bring up these cases directly to the Committee on the Rights of the Child in Geneva to review and to give a recommendation. But mind you, the caveat is they can do that only when they've exhausted the national legal procedures.
Of course.
This was particularly recognized as situations where there are many legal systems in countries which are not adequate to address some of these violations of children's rights in that particular context, and therefore needs attention from a body outside.
Okay, but Victor, just to clarify for some of our viewers, I mean, the name optional protocol implies that countries can choose or not choose to follow them.
Yes, that's why only if some countries have ratified these optional protocols. So it is something that is expected of countries to do, but it is at the end of a decision by the country itself to sign these. That's why they're optional protocols and not therefore mandatory. Because they've signed the Convention on the Rights of the Child, they should also sign the optional protocol.
Right. Okay. So my last question, what do you see in the future of the rights of the child in Southeast Asia, or what would you like to see in the future of regarding rights of the child in Southeast Asia?
I think while definitely since the adoption of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989, there's been a lot of progress in governments and people, parents, communities, recognizing that children have rights and so on. We still have a long way to go in making the mind shift from the needs of children to the rights of children. Children are still looked upon in a patronizing way. Children are still seen as dependent and not as social agents, as social actors. So their capacity to be able to contribute to decisions, to be able to participate and so on is something, that's an area that I think a lot more work needs to be done. So the mind shift of adults, we as adults, how we view our children and how we facilitate support and create the enabling environment for them to be able to participate and to develop as full human beings. So that's one area I think there's still a lot of work to be done. Second, I think in terms of institutions and capacities, to deliver on the rights of the child. This is an area where we need to invest a lot of effort, both in terms of making our institutions, like the juvenile justice system we talked about, much more child-friendly, making our schools, right, much more child-friendly, making our community and our environments much more child-friendly. At the same time, also the capacity of people in government, caregivers, social workers, parents, teachers, and others to be able to deal with children. Yeah? That's an area that I think we need to do more work in Southeast Asia to strengthen the institutions, to make them much more child-friendly, as well as to build the capacity of people who serve children and the ones who interact with children on a daily basis.
Okay, on that note, that was a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much, Victor.